Next point, the glass. And if you've been following me for a while, you know what I'm talking about. No matter what watch I buy for myself, it must have a sapphire crystal glass. Why? Because it's simply the most scratch resistant glass you can find on a watch. If you look at any luxury watch, I mean the watch that show you the time with ends, those watch, they are all made with no exception, well, maybe very few, with sapphire crystal glass. Sapphire crystal glass is not something that is found in nature. It is a mineral manufactured in factory by a very complex process. And the result is this ultra-resistant glass. Basically, if you want to know what is the scratch resistance of a mineral, there is what is called the Mohs scale. It ranks the scratch resistance of minerals from the weakest, the talc, to the strongest, the diamond. Well, on this scale, the sapphire crystal is just below the diamond. So this means that in nature, there is absolutely no mineral that is more resistant than sapphire crystal, except the diamond. But what this means in everyday life? It means you don't have to be super careful every day to not knock it on the door frame, or it means that you can take it to that obstacle course you have next week because you don't really have to care about not scratching your screen. It will not happen. Probably. I have worn a watch on my wrist with a sapphire crystal glass almost all the time for the last 10 years and never ever has one of my watches been scratched. At least for its glass. About the case, that's another story. And it's not because I didn't give them a chance to break. This watch, for example, while I was still an employee, I was wearing it every day to work. I drilled to concrete, I passed my hands into very small hole, I was carrying charge, I knock it countless time, and the glass is still impeccable. Oh, and this one, one day I was doing my bike ride, and while jumping on the curb, I lost my balance. I tilt on the left. But instead of falling, I tip over the ramp on my left. Well, I was on a bridge. And the only point of contact between me and the bridge was the watch. I was sliding against the bridge on the ramp with the watch sliding on it for at least 5 meters. And the glass is always impeccable. The same cannot be said about the bridge, because I had to scrub a lot on the watch to remove some part of it that was melted onto it. Of course, that has scratched the bezel a lot, but the screen is still impeccable. When I buy a watch for a few $100s or even in the $1,000s, the last thing I want is that every time I look at it, I see a big scratch. So I always pick a sapphire crystal glass. Okay, crystal glass does not only have advantage, it is very expensive to manufacture. So much that if a watch gives you the option of having this famous glass, you may find that this option will cost you more than some entry-level watch. That is to say that if we pick the Garmin Fenix 7X, the upgrade alone just to go from the 7X to the 7X Sapphire worth half the price of this whole Garmin Forerunner 55. But hey, certainly it is less frustrating to have a scratch on the glass of a $260 watch than a $1,000 watch. Just ask yourself before buying it, are you ready to have scratches on it if it doesn't have a sapphire crystal glass? Sapphire crystal glass is also slightly heavier. This is why you won't find the option of having it on some watch specifically made for runners. Finally, some says it is less resistant to impact than its biggest competitor, Gorilla Glass. Maybe I never pushed the test far enough to find out. Maybe I should have some fun hitting my watches with a hammer or deliberately drop them on rocks. But I remind you that we are talking about watches here. It's not the kind of thing you accidentally drop. It is trapped on your wrist all day. Moreover, most sport watches have a screen slightly embedded in the watch with a flat surface, so the glass remains very well protected against the famous potential impact. As for the famous Gorilla Glass, yes, it's still a very resistant glass. This is the glass you found on most phones, but when I look at mine, if you forget the broken corners because I drop it many times, you can see that the scratch resistance is far from being extraordinary. It has micro scratch everywhere. But the huge advantage of Gorilla Glass over sapphire crystal is that it is way much transparent. It is indeed much easier to read the screen because it is clearer and reflects way less light. And yes, the difference is this quite obvious. But would you rather have reflections starting today or scratches from tomorrow? So in short, when I choose my watch, I always pick the sapphire crystal glass option. And if it's not an option available, I just pick another watch. But do what you want with that information. I'm just giving it to you before you buy your next watch. If you don't pick the sapphire crystal option, I just don't want you to come to me crying because you scratch your watch. If you pick another material in sapphire crystal, it is not a question of if, but a question of when before you scratch your watch. And please, don't tell me about the $5 protector screen that you can find on Amazon. There's a reason why you don't see ketchup in 5-star restaurant.
This video was an extract of the most complete sport watch purchase guide on YouTube. If you want to see the full video, you can click just right here, and if you want to see the other extracts, you can click just right there. Otherwise, if you're ready to buy your own watch, you can follow my link in the description. And now would be the time to click somewhere, like right now.